To determine the best powerlifter, we have to look at peak performance, dominance, and how well will their accomplishments age. This isn't straightforward, and this top 10 list starts with Ray Williams. Ray Williams is known for having the strongest squat of all time. However, he's also a 5-time gold medalist. He is someone who is a well-rounded lifter, complete, and ultimately set a standard in the sport. However, his biggest weakness is the moment the coefficient changed, and ultimately, he was out-totaled by 90 pounds by now by someone lighter. So because of that, he's a little bit down on this list, even though he used to be my GOAT. That being said, let's look back at that squat and reminisce on how someone could have squatted 500 kilograms.
Ray Williams, 1,005 pounds.
At number 9, we have Russell Orhii. Now here's a crazy stat for you. 2 years into the sport, Russell totaled 1748. 2 years into the sport, John Hack totaled 1736. 3 years and 4 months into the sport, John Hack totaled 1785. 3 years and 7 months into the sport, Russell Orhii totaled 1836. So he was on a better pace than John Hack, who we may see later in this list. That's something not a lot of people think to compare to within their own career, and they were the same age when hitting those numbers individually, because we think just in terms of comparison at that given time. And we also tend to underestimate how much going to the dark side helps. But that being said, the reason why he still is only at number 9, well, you know why. We'll see what he does in his mid-30s and beyond. That being said, he does struggle to even be top 3 in Texas. San Antonio's very own Jesus Olivares. He is number 8 on this list. And that's because he beat Ray Williams' total by nearly 100 pounds, who was already arguably the greatest of all time before Jesus arrived on the scene. Also, he's won 4 straight gold medals, won the first Sheffield. Dominance, high peak ability, and decent longevity. There was actually a 3-year period where nobody was even within 150 pounds of Jesus. The only thing is, there's a lifter with better longevity. By far. Jaroslav Polech won not just 1, not just 2, not just 3, not just 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, but 17 straight IPF golds. And in fact, in total, he's won 19 IPF golds. He won his most recent gold at 49 years old. You could say he's like the LeBron of powerlifting, except he doesn't need the play-in tournament. What's crazy too is he has 5 silver medals and a bronze as well, and a junior gold. So he has been in this sport forever. And in a world where teen powerlifters come and go on TikTok like a flavor of the month, what's perhaps most impressive is he started in 1993 and still has the 163 single ply world record to this day. And some of you may be thinking, well, why is an equipped powerlifter on this list? There is way more parity between single ply and raw than people think, especially on the drug-tested IPF side of the sport. Whereas you look at super heavyweight division, and Jesus Olivares is compared to basically 3,000 men. So when you're looking at the best single ply lifter in history, absolutely, he deserves this spot, and he deserves to be ahead of even the strongest sleeved lifter in drug-tested powerlifting history. That being said, this connects to our next lifter. At number 6, Yuri Belkin. So Yuri Belkin is a great combination of single ply background, raw width wraps, and then also raw width sleeves. And his main accomplishment, I would say, is really being the modern Ed Coan. He's definitely the most comparable. He was the first to break his longest standing deadlift record. His specific peak was totaling 2,350 at 220 pounds raw width wraps, and that compares to Ed Coan's 2,405 with single ply. And a lot of people think Ed Coan's the GOAT. We'll see about that later in this list. But now let's get to the top 5. So before we get into that, let's consider the fact that there are 717,203 powerlifters who've ever competed, but only 5 can make the top 5 greatest of all time list. At number 5, we have Colton Engelbrecht. He is the strongest lifter in the world in a sport that's about being the strongest lifter in the world. He almost locked out 500 kilograms on the deadlift and just narrowly missed it. Now, the only reason he's not higher on this list is longevity. He simply has to do it longer. At the number 4 spot, we have Ed Coan. I can already imagine all the old heads mad, commenting with their caps lock stuck on.
He's the GOAT! The GOAT!
But the reason why he is such a great lifter is because he had 71 world records in his day. He totaled over 2,000 pounds at 181 pounds at 20 years old with single ply equipment that's so bad you could argue it's more similar to raw with wraps today. And the most amazing stat is that of 254,000 lifters in single ply history, his total is still number 9 on the DOTS coefficient to compare across all weight classes, despite the immense technical disadvantage and from being from a smaller era. That is so incredible. His DOTS coefficient's actually higher than Sergei Fedoshenko, who a lot of people consider to be more of a modern GOAT with far better equipment in the modern era. And this is why those old heads see him as the greatest of all time, because he had a 360-pound advantage on the second best lifter in his weight class in his prime, a 101 dot score advantage over second place. That level of dominance will never happen again. Another stat that will never happen again is he was stronger by over 100 pounds over the super heavyweight lifter of his time, while in the 220-pound division.
Now come on, that don't make no damn sense.
And probably his greatest individual lift was a 900-plus pound deadlift on a stiff bar at 220 that was only broken by lifters on a deadlift bar. So a lot of his feats have stood the test of time. Now, why isn't he higher on this list? In his prime, Ed Coan competed in an era of 8,000 powerlifters in total for that year. The best lifter on this list competed when there were 74,000 lifters in that year. We have to admit that population matters. At the number 3 spot, we have Taylor Atwood. He used to be my GOAT, and for good reason. He is a 7-time national champion, 3 times IPF gold medalist, and you could argue that that run may never happen again, especially because we've seen Russell Orhe lose in a given year, and we just see more change in general in this modern era of more dense competition. And I will say, there's one way that Taylor Atwood could go down as the greatest of all time. That's if he beats Joseph Bornstein.
Dinkelberg.
Now, for the greatest of all time, we have 2 lifters left, Austin Perkins and John Hack. Drum roll, please. Who is the greatest lifter of all time? John Hack. Now, the reason why Austin Perkins is number 2 is simply because Taylor Atwood is so great, and Austin can rep his 1 rep max in training easily. That's it. That puts you above everybody else. Even if he has less accomplishments in terms of having less years in the game, you simply cannot deny that fact. But the fact that he doesn't have as much time on top does mean that he is second. And John Hack is number 1, is because he had a world record in the 181, 198, and 220 pound division all at the same time. And those classes are so population dense that that's 66% of all raw powerlifters that he directly was stronger than. That is such an incredible stat to where we don't even need a coefficient at that point. And speaking of coefficients, he still has a 41 dots coefficient lead over second place. And this is out of 380,000 total lifters. So like I said, John Hack is the best combination of Colton's peak ability, but also Ed Coan's level of accomplishment at this point. And also his 198 world record is so dominant, it's still 215 pounds higher than second place. In fact, at 198, he is 72 pounds better than Yuri Belkin, who's the next best lifter in 220-pound weight division. So if we remove John Hack's 220-pound record, he would still have that record by nearly 100 pounds and a weight class down. That is so unbelievable in this era that still has not been contested, and nobody's even come close to John Hack. And I do think the biggest shame in powerlifting is we have grown so accustomed to how great John Hack is that we forget these numbers and just how absurd they are. He is by far the greatest powerlifter of all time. And I'm saying that as someone who, if anything, is biased towards drug-tested lifters. That being said, if you want to be on the top 5 list yourself, there's a link in my bio to the Candido Forever program. I can't guarantee that you'll make this list, but you might.